Hey everybody, Zeal Brothers here once again with another video, this one for the old and the youth, but primarily the youth. And the question is going to be, and I'm going to title the video differently, so hopefully it's not too inflaming, but the question is violence the answer? And the reason I ask that question is because in the education system right now, we have a lot of people that are unresponsive. And when you look at the education system, I was talking to somebody who was stepping in as a substitute teacher. And the problem is that when you step in as a substitute teacher, you see all the problems fresh. And this is a person stepping into a private institution. And they're at this school that is serving primarily black kids. And these kids, there are some good ones. Next to the good ones, you have some semi-good ones, and then you have the bad ones. And it doesn't matter what age range you have some kids that are simply unresponsive. So let's just talk about what I mean, the difference between unresponsive and bad kids. The bad kids are the ones who will give you lip back. The bad kids are the ones who will reject your authority, and they will challenge you. Some of them know that there's only so far you can go, and so they know where that limit is, and that's where they'll go. Then there's the unresponsive kids, and the unresponsive kids, they don't respond to anything. If you punish them, they don't care. They will lay their head on the desk and just sleep. And we have an epidemic of unresponsive kids. Kids who don't respond to incentive or disincentive. They don't respond to encouragement or criticism. They don't respond to anything but what motivates them. And nobody knows that but themselves, and they really will not tell you what motivates them. And I had a problem with this. One day I was mentoring a young guy. I used to take him out to a restaurant every week, and I just eventually stopped. And the reason that I stopped was because I felt that I wasn't getting anything done. And come to find out later that he asked me, said, "Man, why'd you stop?" And I just had to tell him, I said, "Well, every time I talked to you, it seemed like you never said anything back. I would say something funny, you didn't laugh. I would say something insightful, you didn't think. I would ask you questions, you barely gave a word." And so at the end of it, I was like, well, it seemed like I'm kind of bothering him, making him do this thing. And I don't want to be this older guy that's making some, barely high school kid hang with me for an hour every week. So eventually I just stopped, and he was like, well, his mother was like, well, he really enjoyed that. I'm like, he did? He did? I didn't know he enjoyed it because I was mentoring him and I got no response. To this day, I will see him and I will talk to him and he has no response. I'll talk to him and I'll have to reach out to him twice, and he will purposefully try to ignore me. And you may say, man, what's wrong with this dude? And this dude, he's an intelligent dude. He knows things. He's not a dumb kid. He's an athletic kid. When he's with his friends, sometimes he will talk then. He's on the quieter side, but this is just how he is. He's unresponsive. And when you ask, how did he get that point? The reason is because his parents let him be like that. And he's not the only one. You got a lot of people like that. A lot of people who just don't care. So you'll talk to a policeman and they'll be on the scene of a crime, and it'll be a horrific scene. And there'll be somebody there who just looks at it and doesn't care. They could see a dead baby. They don't care. They could see a dead grandma. They don't care. There's a lot of things that they see they have no response to. They don't have curiosity. They don't have any response. They don't seem to have any emotions. They just are dead living. They walk around like zombies. And then on top of these kids whose parents didn't stimulate them, whose parents allowed them to be like that, right? You'll take a kid like that to church. And I'll say to a kid like that, hey, maybe you need to foster some relationships here. Some of my first jobs came because of the relationships that I had in church. And they just look at you like you're an idiot. Because they don't care. They do not care. And it is way easier to handle the rebellious kid because at least the rebellious kid emotes. At least he has some kind of response that you can read. And the rebellious kid is one that you can understand that. And I think a lot of parents misread it, right? Because the rebellious kid he needs discipline. But the unresponsive kid needs discipline too. They are quietly rebelling. And the question is violence the answer? And the answer is yes. See, the reason that we don't get results in school, and the reason why a lot of people think the black community is doomed, is because when you look in our schools, you see the fools, you see the unresponsive, and then you see the few kids trying to do well, and they are hampered by everyone else. The teacher can barely pay attention to the gifted students because they spend so much time trying to get order in class. Half the class is spent reviewing stuff everybody should have paid attention to the last class. You never get through the material that you plan to get through for the whole year. That's how most class is. And it is getting worse every year. And when people ask what the answer is, the answer has to be force. Because people will not wake up. And here's the thing. A lot of these kids, and it doesn't matter. I'm talking about high school age now. But I have talked to people who mentor little kids, and they'll mentor 4 and 5-year-olds. And these kids know that the teachers can't do anything, so they don't care about the discipline. For a little kid, you can't really give them no extra homework. You can't really give them no detention. So what can you do with them? You sit them in the corner, but what if they refuse to go? Now you're accused of manhandling the kid. Here's the truth. Manhandle the kid. And I know you can't do that. But if we allowed people to manhandle the kids, if we allow people to do physical discipline, we would wake up some of these fools. The Bible says a rod for a fool's back. And we have, in our own way, said no to that. In our own way. I remember, if you watch and you read a lot of Japanese and Korean and Chinese entertainment, there's this practice that they have in schools where they still let teachers hit kids. And sometimes they'll put their hands out and they'll take a ruler and smack the top of the back of hands of kids, whether they're boys or girls. They talk and they'll throw a chalk mark at them, or they'll throw an eraser at them. And they don't care if they hit anybody, and if somebody gets embarrassed, that's okay. And they enforce discipline on their kids, and it's a small wonder that many of the most educated kids in the world tend to be in the Asian cultures. We need to bring discipline back. We need to bring force back. We need the threat of underlying violence back to wake people up. And what we've done is we've ignored the lessons that have passed. They used to be back in the day, and I talked to my dad about this and many others, that teachers used to be able to do what they do now in Asian cultures. They would take a little paddle and hit the back of people's hands. Or they put your palms up and smack that, and it would hurt, but it wouldn't cause you any lasting pain or any scars or anything like that. But it will wake you up. It will make you pay attention. You will realize there was a feeling consequence. And for a lot of people, because they have not trained themselves with the human side, in other words, the rational part of themselves, you have to train them with the animal side, which is the feeling part of themselves, the feeling of pain. And with a culture that has gone as bad as we have gone in the black community, yes, violence is the answer. And when you look at these kids on these campuses, you can't tell me that you care about these kids if you don't want some level of severity in their education. Otherwise, we can just let them fail. Because what's the hope for the guy who puts his head down on the desk and just sleeps in 9th grade? What's the hope for that guy? How will he ever be successful? What's the success rate of the girl who argues and cusses out the teacher in class just because the teacher expects her to pay attention and stop talking to her friend? How will she ever succeed in life or relationships or anything? What chance does a kid who's 5 years old who already won't listen, what chance does he have of listening when he's 7, when he's 9, when he's 11, when he's 13, when he's 15, when he's 17? Small wonder that he's in jail already or in prison already when he's 19. He's been trained not to listen. He's been trained to not take authority seriously. And in many ways, we continue that lack of discipline in our own criminal system. So we got people like this Darrell Brooks who get out again and again and again. We got people advocating for no bail. We got people advocating for less crime penalties. We got people who are acting like it is some kind of racial injustice to punish criminals. Let me tell you what's racial injustice. Racial injustice is taking this mediocrity and these low outcomes and not taking those seriously enough to do something about it. That's racism. Racism is expecting black people to be on the bottom or stay on the bottom and not willing to do something about it. Racism is thinking that these kids have to be dumb. They must be dumb. They have no potential to be smart, and just leaving them there. That's real racism. And that's what needs to be fought. And I wish many of these SJW types would fight that battle for black people.